Okay, so here's where we are. We've been going through some general terms, some marketing terms. We talked about permission sets, data spaces, data bundles, APIs, where you're going to provision your data cloud, like which Salesforce CRM it will sit in, briefly reports and dashboards, connectors, super important topic to get grounded on. Briefly transforms, and this is based on the number of terms in the official glossary plus additional terms that I've come up with during my studies. And now finally we're to the mapping stage. Mapping to the data model, to data model objects, and this is also called harmonizing. And just to review, in the real world, harmonize and unify may sound similar. Getting things to get along with each other, or combining things, but they are two very distinct steps in Data Cloud. Harmonizing is when you map from the DLO, the data lake objects, to the DMO, data model objects, because you're bringing in data from lots of different sources potentially, and the same kind of information could be called different things in different systems. So here we're saying, oh, here's an email address. It's called something different here and something different there. Let's map it to a specific object, and then we can use the data model to do calculations and segmentation. So it's harmonizing as a way to bring the different values from the different systems and get them working together in the data model. Then after that step, which we won't talk about in this video, is unification. And that's where you're looking at records and saying, oh, this is the same person as this person. We're going to create a unified profile for this person or this account. So you can see that this step, the harmonizing step, is about fields, and the unification step is about records. So we're going to focus this video on the terminology, and there are 25 terms here. It's the biggest category, so let's get going. So we're starting here at, where are we starting? Number 15. Here we go. Number 1. Okay, harmonizing or harmonization, the process of mapping ingested data into the customer 360 data model. Another definition is the process of combining data from different sources into a single standardized data model. This model can then be used for insights, segmentation, and activation. So data mapping is the process of associating or mapping data lake objects to data model objects after data has been ingested into Data Cloud. Only mapped fields and objects with relationships can be used for segmentation and activation. So we've mentioned the Customer 360 data model. Let's define that. It's the standard canonical data model used for Data Cloud to help with interoperability across systems. The model defines the standard subject areas, objects, fields, metadata, and relationships to ensure consistency across applications and business processes. Also defined as data ingested into Data Cloud is mapped to DMOs found in the Customer 360 data model. What is a data model? A way to organize and standardize data elements and to add and edit data relationships. Data model is also a tab within Data Cloud where users can create custom data model objects and view existing data model objects. What does canonical mean? We saw that here. Canonical is according to recognized rules or scientific laws, accepted as being accurate and authoritative, and often is used related to sacred books. But I think the key word here is authoritative. So by calling the Customer 360 data model canonical, they're saying this is going to be the authority from which all of your calculations and segmentations and activations are going to come, whereas all your data sources, where the values are coming from, whatever the values are, whatever the fields are called, wherever they come from, is not the authoritative definition of that data. That the authoritative definition is in the customer 360 data model. And I would just add here, and I think we'll get to it, but they provide this standard data model with these standard data model objects, and they recommend that you use them whenever possible. If you have fields that are not accounted for in the out-of-the-box data model, you can add fields to the existing objects if that's appropriate, if that's where they belong. And if there's no object for the data that you're bringing in, then you can add custom objects to the data model. You could even create your own bespoke data model, but they don't recommend that. They recommend using this canonical model and adding to it if you need to, in which case it would become a hybrid model of partially standard data model, customer 360 data model objects plus your own data model objects. I think even if you add your own custom fields to the existing objects, it's considered a hybrid data model at that point. Okay, so what are subject areas? This is part of the Customer 360 data model, and they're just groupings of data model objects to aid in data modeling. And they include party, engagement, loyalty. Over here, I have them listed out. So there's the case data model, which would be related to service or support. There's the engagement data model. There's the loyalty data model, the party data model, the privacy data model, the product subject area data model, and the sales order data model. So these names are pretty self-explanatory. I would just say the word party, which I think we're coming to in the definition, is reflecting contact information, which could be personal or a business, for a specific customer or account. That's the party. Here we don't mean party like birthday party, we mean party like the entity that you're doing business with. Loyalty data model would have to do with loyalty cloud, product subject area, anything you plan to sell or any part of a product to track for service purposes, sales orders related to sales, territory management, etc. Okay, DMO stands for Data Model Object, which is part of the data model, the Customer 360 data model. And the definition of a DMO is a grouping of data made up of attributes created from data streams, insights, and other sources. DMOs can be standard or can be custom based on business need. Common standard DMOs include sales orders, which would be in this subject area, account, which would be in the party area, party identification, email engagement, and so on. Now, this part is curious. DMOs can be virtual, a view into a data lake object, or physical, an actual grouping of data found in Data Cloud. Now, the data in Data Cloud is not actually stored in the Salesforce CRM. It's actually stored in a data lake. So I think the distinction they're drawing here would be the difference between ingesting data into Data Cloud, which is actually stored in a Data Cloud data lake, versus pointing at data in an existing data lake. So what are objects? This is a general term that references data found in a database. Within Data Cloud, it's used in relation to data model objects. What does cardinality mean? Cardinality is the number of elements in a set or other grouping as a property of the grouping. For example, 1-to-1, one to n, or one to many, or n to one, or many to one. So cardinality is this kind of relationship. If you're relating two things to each other, is it a one-to-one relationship? Is it one in this object could have many in the second object? These two things mean the same thing. Or is it many in the first object can only relate to one in the second object, and these two things mean the same thing? So now we will see that kind of symbolism here when we talk about the attributes, which was already mentioned as part of data model objects. So attributes are the information or data found in data model objects. You can also think of this as fields, but it's only called attributes in Data Cloud. So for segmentation, Data Cloud offers two types of attributes. One-to-one is referred to as direct, and any one-to-many is referred to as related. So that's just something to memorize. That's how it's referred to. Anything one-to-one is direct, anything one to n, or I guess it could be n to one, or maybe it's only one to n. That's called related. So this evaluation originates from the object that was selected for segment on. So when we get later to the point of segmenting, you tell Data Cloud which profile category data model object you are going to segment on. So you can't segment on engagement or other types of data categories, only the profile data categories. And depending on which one you choose is going to determine which attributes are available to use while you're segmenting and to activate to the targets of where you're sending the segments to. So, for example, if the individual DMO is selected as segment on, then individual.firstname or individual.gender attributes are listed as direct attributes because each person only has one first name and one gender field, I should say, in the data model. Additionally, all attributes from other DMOs that are related to individual with a relationship cardinality of one-to-one are also called direct attributes because anything that's one-to-one in Data Cloud is called direct attribute. Related attributes are the one-to-n relationships. So if they have one or more values for a record in the segment on object, for example, if individual DMO is selected as segment on, then contact point email dot is active or sales order dot grand total amount attributes are listed as related attributes because they can have a one-to-many relationship with the individual DMO. Contact point, a field or set of fields that represent data points that can be used to contact or engage an individual, for example, email or phone. So there's contact point email, contact point phone, and contact point address data model objects. Device ID, this is a unique identifier used for electronic devices. DMPs and customer data platforms can use these identifiers to relate devices to a person-based ID. I didn't really see anything much more about this, but it is in the official glossary. Now, it's important to understand the concept of primary and foreign keys. So, an object's unique identifier of a record, such as a customer email address or a product SKU. The relationship is made by matching the values of the foreign key in one table with the values of the primary key in another. So what this is basically saying is that every record in an object has to have a unique identifier, and that's the primary key. And then as you relate other objects to this object, you're pointing to the IDs in the other object. So it's foreign. It's foreign to this object. I have the primary key in the first object. The second object has its own primary keys. And as I refer to those primary keys in the second object, in the first object, that is referred to as a foreign key. It's coming from a different object. So let's define foreign key, a field in a table that refers to the primary key of another table. The foreign key links these two data tables together based on a data point, for example, a customer ID. Boy, that's a little bit of a confusing definition, but let's move on to fully qualified key. So FQK is the acronym for fully qualified key, which is a composite key that contains a source key and a key qualifier. Use fully qualified keys to avoid key conflicts when data from different sources is harmonized in the Data Cloud data model. So here's some more information. A source key plus a key qualifier. Each data stream ingested into Data Cloud has its specific keys and attributes which could conflict. Records can have the same key values. Fully qualified keys avoid conflicts by adding key qualifier fields. What did that say? I don't know. Okay, a fully qualified key consists of a source key, such as a contact ID from a CRM or a subscriber key from Marketing Cloud Engagement, and a key qualifier. Now, you can use a formula field to concatenate the values to make a fully qualified key. However, it also says under key qualifier fields that they are schema fields that are automatically added to DLOs and DMOs by Data Cloud. Key qualifier fields contain key qualifiers. Key qualifiers are values configured for key qualifier fields to identify the data source. Create and configure key qualifiers for each DLO field that contains either a primary key or a foreign key. After creating a data stream, add key qualifiers to your data lake object fields to create fully qualified keys. Configure key qualifiers for all DLO fields that contain either a primary or foreign key. You can add up to 20 active key qualifiers. A key qualifier is active when it's used for a DLO field. Data Cloud automatically adds and removes key qualifiers to and from data model object fields, and you can't edit these system fields. So this is something to study, because here we're saying you can use a formula key to make a fully qualified key, and here it says it happens automatically. Here it says it's automatic to DLO and DMO. Here it says it seems to imply that you add them to the DLO and then Data Cloud does it automatically to the DMO. So to me, there's a little bit of clarifying needed here. I'm going to skip over these because this is probably going quite long. Party, I mentioned earlier, is a term that can refer to a subject area or a field in Data Cloud reflecting a unique identifier like a driver's license number or a contact ID. Yeah, I don't love that definition either, but we do see this field called party in all of those contact point objects. And so if you have records in, let's say in the contact point email object, if you have rows of email addresses, we need to know who that email belongs to. And so there's a field called party in the contact point email object that's going to point to an object in the data model that holds the people. and the people are defined by a unique identifier like a driver's license number or a contact ID. So party kind of has three different definitions, but all related to each other. It means the entity you're doing business with, like an individual or a company. It's also has to have a unique identifier, like a driver's license or a contact ID, and it's going to be referred to as a party in those contact point objects and other objects. Those objects have relationships with each other. So the connection between two objects or sets of data is called a relationship. Relationships include one-to-one and one-to-many. We've talked about that already a little bit. And then we have the difference between structured and unstructured data, which is not in the official glossary, but really briefly, data that fits neatly into tables and includes discrete data types like numbers, short text, and dates is called structured data. And then unstructured data doesn't fit neatly because of its size or nature. For example, audio and video files and large text documents are unstructured data. And so Data Cloud can handle unstructured data in addition to structured data.